Hello, good evening, America. Good evening, Africa. Good evening, Europe, and good morning, Asia. My name is Enoch Opoku MP, and it's been a long time, right, that we had leadership talk. So today we're going to talk about a very pertinent topic, and the title of the leadership talk today is Making Positive Arguments on Radio, TV, Work, and Homes. I'm just going to take 20 minutes of your time, and then we'll learn these topics about how to make cogent arguments. The reason why I'm doing this is that I traveled this summer, and in all my travels I realized that arguments on TV and radios and homes and at work has been all of insults and passion, and people are really not listening to each other. So I thought that we all need education on that. 3 individuals were asked to run on a track from point A to B. And in doing so, those who organized the running were looking for the one who would run straight from point A to point B. Now, out of the 3 individuals who were running, one was looking straight at his feet whilst running. The other one was looking on the side whilst running. And then the third one was looking straight. Which one of them do you think will run on a straight line from point A to point B? I'll leave that for you to think a little bit about that. So this is my learning outcome. We are going to learn what arguments are, and I'll give you some 22 rules of making good arguments and the need for feedback in arguments. I must say that sound arguments are fundamental pieces of basic reasoning, and from everyday family life, work, science, politics, philosophy, and even religion. Arguments are constantly offered to us for our consideration, and we must in turn offer back our own. We must reason together, and it is prudent to agree to disagree agreeably. I hope you call some friends. Let's sit and talk about this argument. So this is my preamble. Arguments at home, work, television, radio, and at work are bound to happen. Nobody can run away from arguments. At the national level, Abraham Lincoln had this to say: don't interfere with anything in the Constitution. That must be maintained, for it is the only safeguard of our liberties. That means obey the Constitution, which must be amended to suit current need of every country, salute your national flag, and support your army, because the army can overthrow the Constitution. No argument on that. Now let's go to where we can have arguments and do it intellectually. What is the goal for this leadership talk? My goal is to introduce you to the art and science of making positive arguments at home, work, TV, and radios. Many individuals think that arguments is simply stating their own prejudices in a new form. That is why many people think that arguments are unpleasant and pointless. One dictionary definition for argument is dispute. In this case, a verbal fist fight. It happens that though it is not what argument is about, it's not about fist fight. So what is argument? Argument means to offer a set of reasons or evidence in support of a conclusion. I repeat that again. Argument is a means to offer a set of reasons or evidence in support of a conclusion. In argument, you are stating your views. We make efforts to support certain views and reason. That is why we do arguments. So in argument, in this case, it's not pointless. In fact, they are essential because A, it is a way of finding out which views are better than others. 2, remember all views are not equal. 3, some conclusions can be supported by good reasons, others cannot. And the 4th one is that argument is a means of inquiry to know more. So we argue to know more. Typically, we learn to argue by assertion. And that is, we tend to start with our conclusion, our desires or opinion, without a whole lot to back them up. Positive arguments, by contrast, take time and practice. We come to appreciate how much difference our own critical thinking can really make. And in argument, we must share reasonings proportioning conclusions to the actual evidence, considering the objections, and all the rest that comes in between. These are acquired skills, and that is why I need to teach it. So I'm going to give you some rules about arguments, how to make positive arguments, and Anthony Watson is an expert on these. So rule number 1 is identify premises and then conclusion. Anytime you want to have a cogent argument, you need to identify your premise, then your conclusion. So first ask yourself, what are you trying to prove in an argument? And whatever you want to prove, the statement that give your reasons are called your premise. The conclusion is the statement for which you are giving the reason. So consider this line from a quote of Winston Churchill. He says, and I quote him, "I am an optimist. It does not seem to be much use being anything else." Let's pause a little bit and think about this statement. This argument, Winston Churchill is saying that he's giving reasoning for being an optimist. And the premise is that it does not seem to be much use being anything else. Do you think it's valid or not? I think it's valid because he gave the conclusion and then gave the premise to support that. Let's go to rule number 2. Develop your ideas in a natural order. Anytime you want to have a good argument, you need to develop your ideas in a natural order. They need to be natural. It should not be artificial. So you put your conclusion first, followed by your reasoning. Set out your ideas in an order that unfolds your line of thought most clearly for the listeners to know. Now let's go to rule number 3. You have to start from a reliable premise. Remember, if your premise is wrong, your conclusion will be wrong. So no matter how well you argue from a premise to conclusion, your conclusion will be weak if your premise is weak. So let's consider one example. This is what somebody said: "Nobody in the world today is really happy. Therefore, it seems that human beings are just not made for happiness. Why should we expect what we can never find?" This is somebody's argument. What do you think? Well, the premise of this argument is that nobody in the world today is really happy. And this is a weak premise because some people are happy. Let's go to rule number 4. You have to be concrete and concise. In doing that, you have to avoid abstract, vague, and general terms. A lot of people use general terms, and most that I've seen in radio and TV is, we all agree that. You and who agree to what? Maybe that is your thought process, but other people might not agree to your thought process. So don't use the word "we all agree that" when you are in a panel. Other people might not agree to that. I've also seen that somebody saying, "I'm apologizing for somebody." Well, some things that you think are not well spoken, unguarded words, somebody might say them and think it's fine. We don't reason the same. The other thing is that I want to give you an example. We worked for hours in the sun. We worked for hours in the sun. It's 100 times better than you saying that it was an extended period of laborious exertion. I've seen that a lot of people use big words thinking that, well, when you use big words and people have to scramble with dictionaries to understand the meaning of those words, it means that you understand grammar. No, that is not the case in argument. In argument, you are communicating and you need to soften the words down so that every audience and listener can understand exactly what you're trying to say. And in doing so, you have to be concise. Every elaboration just loses everyone in a fog of words. So make sure you are concise and you are breaking the words down. Use simple words so that everybody can understand you in an argument. Rule number 5 is build on substance, not overtone. Offer actual reason, not just play on the overtone of others. Other people, talk down on other people. They yell at other people. They insult at other people. It is not a rule in any valid argument. Make sure that you allow other people to also talk. Don't talk over them. So avoid emotions or using emotional words in an argument. Anytime you use emotions, you cannot argue well. Make sure you are using more logic way of reasoning so that you can argue your point. Marshal enough argument to support the claim that you want to give. Rule number 6 is use consistent terms. I'm going to give you an example here. When you learn about other cultures, you start to realize the variety of human customs. When you start to realize the variety of human customs, you need to become more tolerant. Therefore, when you learn about other cultures, you tend to become more tolerant. Look at how consistently the words have been used and ended with therefore. So your transitional words are very important if you want to use good arguments. Rule number 7, use more than one example. And here there's a caveat that I will tell you about a secret. A single example can sometimes be used for illustration. But if you want to build a case, you need more examples to support that claim. So I'm going to give you an example here. Somebody says that French fries are unhealthy because they are high in fat. Milkshakes are also unhealthy because they are high in fat and sugar. And then deep fried chicken and cheeseburgers are also unhealthy because they are high in fat. Now the person has given 3 different examples, and based on that, the person answered this. Therefore, all fast foods are unhealthy. Yes, you might disagree with that person, but the person has given 3 different examples to support that claim. Now, there's a rule. If you want to beat this rule number 7, it means that you can argue by analogy with a single example. So if you use an analogy, a single example is enough for a very good argument. And I'm going to give you an example of an analogy. A medical doctor says this: people take in their cars for servicing and checkup few months without complaint. Why shouldn't they take similar care of their bodies? Well, the medical doctor is using an analogy of a car to explain that if you take your car to the mechanic for checkup, why don't you go for checkup yourself? And you can see that the analogy of a car, we are not cars. We don't have tires, we don't have engines or anything. But the medical doctor is using that analogy to explain that we need to go for checkups. Another one is that people insure their cars and boats. Why can't they insure their own lives? And this is an argument for somebody who want to do life insurance, that if we are insuring our cars and then our boats, why cannot we not insure our own lives? And I think this analogy, a single analogy, is good enough for a cogent argument. Rule number 8, you have to use representative examples. And I'm going to give you an example here. Everyone in my neighborhood favors James for president. Therefore, James is sure to win. This is a representative example. The person is arguing that because everybody in the neighborhood is saying that James will be the president, he thinks. And remember, in argument, it's what you think, not what the other person thinks. He thinks that James is going to win. We have another example from Shakespeare's play. Juliet's mother said this to her: think of marriage now, younger than you. Here in Verona, ladies of esteem are made already mothers. By my count, I was your mother much more these years that you are now a maid. So Juliet, remember Juliet, Romeo and Juliet. Juliet's mother in Shakespeare's play is saying that at your age, I was married in Verona, so it is time for you to marry. And that is a representative example that the mother gave. Rule number 9, background rates may be crucial. You need some background. And that means that you need a little more data to support your claim if you want to have that good argument. So let's see this example of a data. Lee's horoscope told him that he will meet a cheerful new stranger, and lo and behold, he did. Therefore, horoscopes are reliable. Well, dramatic as such an example may be, the problem still remains that we are only looking at one case in which a horoscope came true. To validate that example, we need the ratio of those who have used the horoscope accurately and how it worked. So somebody can give an example, but for it to be cogent and valid, we need other examples to support that claim. Rule number 10 is statistics need a critical eye. Most people think that statistics don't lie, but today I will show you that statistics is just an idea. I'll show you how it works. So some people see numbers, any numbers in any argument, and conclude from the fact alone that, well, that could be a good argument. The person is giving statistics. 20% of people are this, 30% of people are this. Well, there are faces attached to the numbers, number 1. 2, statistics to have an aura of authority and definitiveness. But that definition, 88% agree to this. What about the other side, 12%? What do you think about them? 90% of people who agree to this. Well, 90% is okay. But what about the other percentage? What do you do about them? So we have to know about the other side of what other people also think. That is why in any statistics, we have the margin of error, which is very important. So any poll that you see, they will tell you that, okay, in this election, let's I'm just giving an example. Democrats are going to have 51% and Republicans are going to have 49%. Well, the margin of error, anytime we have a margin of error, it means that we sample some population. So let's say 10 people are being sampled out of 15. Because you do not talk to everybody, but you talk to 10 out of 15, you are going to have that margin of error. And that sample error, most cogently used in statistics, is plus or minus 3. So if the idea based on the poll says that Democrats are going to win by 51%, that's an example. I'm not saying Democrats are going to win. And Republicans will get 49%. It means that in real figures, plus 3 could be 54, which is 51 plus 3, which will be 54%. Or minus 3 is going to be 48%. So anything can happen because the sample error is plus or minus 3. Sorry for taking you to statistics, those of you who don't like math, but I use that for analysis purpose. So those numbers take as much critical thinking as any other kind of evidence. Don't turn off your brain when it comes to statistics. I'm also going to give you another example. Averages do not exist. Yes, averages do not exist. There's nothing like an average person in the world. And let's talk even about age. Do we have average age? But we do that in statistics. So we give it an idea that somebody is 30 years, another person is 50 years, then the other person is 40 years. So if you added 3 people, their age is going to give you 120. Divided by 3, it's going to give you 40, right? The average age of the 3 people is 40. But the one who is 30, is that person going to turn 40? No way. The person is still 30. What about a person who was 50? Yes, that person is not going to reduce his or her age from that 50 to 40. So averages does not exist. It is the idea that we use in statistics. Think about that. There's also manipulation of numbers. Be wary of numbers that are easily manipulated. And pollsters, those who do the polls, you can see that when elections are coming, there are a lot of pollsters. They know very well that the way a question is asked can shape how it is answered. Yes, the way you ask a question can shape how it is answered. I teach research in a master's program, and I can tell you that the way we ask questions can skew the responses, and your bias is coming there. So these days we are even seeing polls that try to change people's mind about a political candidate. So watch statistics. Now let's talk about association and correlation. I've seen a lot of people who talk about association and correlation. Sometimes they mean association and they talk about correlation. Sometimes they mean correlation and they talk about association. People confuse these words. So let's go deeply into that to know how we can argue really well. 2 people dance. They spin, twirl, somersault, and more or less together. Do they hear the same music? Maybe no. That is why you see 2 people dancing and one is throwing the leg here, the other person is throwing the leg out there. But they are all listening to the same music because they don't hear the same beat. Well, that's why even 2 partners living under the same roof may see situations differently at home. So individuals make arguments and we want to see associations and correlations in their point of that argument. Correlations are like scores in pairs, synchronized swimming events. So 2 people involved can achieve perfect score by performing identical or exactly opposite movement. Anything in between is not as synchronized. So correlations measure the degree to which values for 2 measures move in a synchronized manner. Values for 2 measures, the way they move in a synchronized manner. The farther away from 0 and closer to 1, that is moving together, or to -1, that is moving at the opposite direction, the more synchronized they are. So the closer to 0, the more independent they are. Generally, absolute values of about 0.2 are considered weak. About 0.5 are considered moderate. And about 0.8 are considered strong. So correlations have 2 aspects: strength and direction. Most of the time, we want to see the strength and then the direction of a correlation. So correlation by itself does not imply causation. Yes, if A plus B will give you a C, it doesn't necessarily mean that C plus B will give you an A. And this point is worth remembering very well. The fact that A correlates to B does not mean A causes B. But correlation assesses the strength of mathematical association. But when you bring it to everyday life, Correlations are not considered to be causal because a different potentially measured characteristic might usually be the causal agent. Being humans, individuals state or imply causation more than what they might intend. It is quite easy to slip and state a finding of an association as though it were causal. Many individuals have paid a price in terms of their reputation for implying causation when they only had an association. Rule number 11, I'm almost done. Causal arguments start with correlations. And I'm checking those who are online who want to contribute. Yes, if I see people who want to contribute, I'll mention your name and then greet you. So rule number 11, causal arguments start with correlations. The evidence for a claim about causes is usually a correlation. A regular association between two events or kind of events, say between your grades and where you sit in a classroom, or being married and being happy. There's a research that says that those who sit closer at the front in the classroom get higher grades than those who sit at the back. And do you know that on the average, people who are married are happier than those who are not? That is what the research finds. But I know people can argue about this, that there are a lot of people who are married but they are not happy. Yes, there's that argument. So rule number 12, work toward the most likely explanation if you want to have a good argument. Here, make a connection with your argument. That is, spell out how each possible explanation could connect with your premise. Try to fill the connection, not just for the explanation in your favor, but also for alternative explanation as well. And let me give you one example here. Marriage clearly offers companionship and support, which could explain how marriage might make people happy. Do you see the connection? People are saying that the research have found that most married people are happier than those who are not married. And the reason is that those who are married, one, receive support and then companion from their partners. That is why they are happier than those who are not married. Let's go to rule number 13. Consider counter-examples. Now, counter-examples are examples that contradict your own generalization. So ask yourself about counter-examples when you are assessing others' arguments as well as evaluating your own. Ask whether their conclusions might have to be revised and limited or rethought in more subtle and complex direction. The same rule applies to both others when you are making an argument. And remember, when you make an argument, other people can also give counter-example to weaken your argument, and you need to accept that. The only difference is that you have a chance to correct your overgeneralization yourself if you give counter examples to yourself. And I like people who critique themselves very well. It helps them so that when others are criticizing them, they accept that. I talked to one of my students who do ballet. She does dancing. And she said that, Professor E, what I've realized is that those of us who do sports, we receive a lot of criticism from our coaches. And because of that, when we come to classroom and professors give feedback, we don't take it personally. We accept those criticisms. That is a way to make us better. But those who do not engage in any sporting activities, when you give them feedback, some of them take it personally. So I think sports helps some people, and IBM have found a research that most great leaders like sports. The other thing is clustering. Anytime you use clustering, it's overgeneralization. You know, I've seen a lot of clustering. People are giving all blacks are this, all whites are that. Those are clustering. You are clustering people into groups and then making a generalization out of that. That is not a good argument. You have to desist from using that if you are fond of using that way of arguing. Rule number 14, analogies require relevant and similar examples. So argument by analogy do not require that the example used as an analogy be the exact way. And I gave an example of a medical doctor earlier who think that if people uses their car and go for checkup, why can't human beings also do checkup? Well, like I said, we are not cars, but that analogy explains why we need to go for checkup. It is very important. We also need solid sources to support our claims, and no one can be an expert through direct experience or anything there is to know. Instead, we must rely on others, better situated people, organizations, surveys, or references works to tell us how much of what we need to know about the world. So you cannot know it all. In fact, 500 years before Christ, Confucius lived. And what he said is that it is the wiser person who knows the limit of his or her ignorance. Yes, we all have to admit we don't know something. There are many things we don't know. And that is why we live in a world of specialization. Let's go to rule number 15. Some actual or factual assertions are obvious, and we all know about them. So some assertions are obvious. Everybody knows about that. Let me give you an example. That America have 50 states. United States of America have 50 states. That everybody knows this, right? Or Juliet loved Romeo. We all know about Romeo and Juliet story. That is obvious for everybody. So these are factual assertions that we were told from infancy till now, and nothing has changed about that. But there's a but here. A precise figure for the current population of US, you need to cite your source. Anytime I'm grading some master's program, I will see students talking about, they will make some bold claims, and I will put some inscription there. Says who? Yes, says who? You need to cite your source. And if you want to claim that Juliet was only 14 when she married, yes, Juliet was only 14 when she married Romeo, or they fell in love, you have to cite Shakespeare's line to support that claim. Rule number 16, seek informed sources. You don't need to cite any sources, but you need an informed source, peer-reviewed articles. Sources may be qualified to make statements they make. And let's say obstetricians, they are qualified to discuss pregnancy and childbirth. If you want to talk about these issues, well, go to them, and then because that's their fault, and cite them. People who have the most at stake in a dispute, that is rule number 17, seek impartial sources. There are some people who will cite their sources, but you can see that the sources are partial. And people who have the most at stake in a dispute are usually not the best source of information about the issues involved. This is a problem we have in politics. Because politicians have the best stake in an issue, when you call them, yes, sometimes they may even tell a lie. So in that argument, the rule number 17 says that those who have the most at stake in a dispute, they are not the people you should go to be the source, because they might lie to you because they have a high stake on the issues. Rule number 18 is cross-check your source. Anytime you want to use a source, consult and compare a variety of sources to see if those who are experts agree on that issue. It is very important for you to do so. Rule number 13, use the web with care. Enter a few keywords, and the web will give you a truckload of information on almost any suggestion or issue. So all manner of views and topics are available almost instantly by the stroke of a click. Reliability, though, is another matter. Are those information reliable? In fact, the best information is often found in databases or other academic sources that standard search engines cannot bring them up to you. Normally, you have to search within these databases to find most reliable articles or information or any given topic. So look at that. Rule number 20, expect complexity. Plenty of people, are not married, of course. And plenty of people are married, but they are also not happy. So anytime you give statistics, expect that complexity, that people are going to give you counter argument, and be ready to come out with your other counter argument to support your claim. It does not follow that marriage has no effect on happiness on average. It is just that happiness and unhappiness, and for that matter, being married or unmarried, have a myriad of other sources too. One correlation is not the whole story. And ask other people why they are not married, or why they are married and they are not happy, and you hear a lot of stories. So there's a lot of complexity there. Dilemma is also an issue there in argument. Sometimes you don't even understand what you're talking about. A dilemma is a choice between two options, both of which are unappealing, or they have unappealing consequences. Be thoughtful in answering a dilemma question, because you need that to have a good argument. And then consider objections. Don't think only of the positive side of the argument. There are also negative side that people will point them out to you. Be ready to accept them. It is better to do so, or maybe make fundamental changes in advance. The last rule is consider alternatives. If you are defending a proposed argument, it is not enough to show that your proposal will solve a problem. It might also show that it is better than other plausible ways of solving that same problem. So look for a series of alternative thoughts and be creative about that. In the end, get feedback and use it. Taylor and Francis in 2013 did this study, and they found the use of feedback. They gave us about 5 tips to learn from feedback. They say that always consider the comments of others, whether you like them or not. In Any dialogue or argument, consider the thought of other people, whether you like them or not. That is also their thought. You need to respect them, accept that, and then consider them. Arguments are about learning and listening. Anytime you're arguing, learn from other people. Yes, you don't argue just to, push your ideas on the throat of the other people. That's not what arguments are about. We argue to learn and then listening. Then it is also hard to learn from constructive feedback if you take offense to it. Some people take offense to everything. They are very umbrageous, easily offended. Yes. And one bad thing is that if you are easily offended when people give you a feedback, there will be a time everybody will be quiet in the room. Nobody will give you any feedback again. And it's not going to help you. You will be lonely. So make sure that you understand that constructive feedback, you should not be offended at that. And expect to be imperfect. It takes a lot of learning, screwing up patience, and self-discipline to achieve excellence. You have to review your feedback. Finally, you are in charge of your mind. You can help it grow by using it the right way. And Carol Dweck, who is a mindset expert, says that in the end, if you are open to receiving feedback and thoughtful arguments and view it as an opportunity for change and growth, great things can happen to you. Having the right mindset about feedback is important in all of our pursuits, including schoolwork, relationship, and even leadership. Jeremy Nabi once said, wisdom requires not only the investigation of many things, but contemplation of the mystery. Well, arguments are a mysterious part of nature. We can't run away from it, but we must handle it with respect and decency and the rules that I've taught you. That concludes my talk for today. Have a very pleasant evening. God bless you.